Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If there are any ladies, but I can only see, oh, there's a lady at the back. How are you? Oh, she's right.
They're there.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming to this press conference. It's our press conference. It's our first press conference for the year 2025. And I want to thank you all for coming. It was such a short notice, and as usual, you always turn up, and I want to thank you for that. First of all, before we go any further, I want to introduce the top guest. From this far end, it is the National Organizing Secretary, Honorable Berekeres Aisekwa is our National Organizing Secretary. And then in red cap is the National Chairperson of the party, Honorable Solomon Stokes Chikovero. And then we have got the Deputy President, the Honorable Main Pariwa. And last but not least, the man himself, the President of the party, Senator Douglas Mwonzora. Welcome, Mr. President. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Presidential Spokesperson. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, members of the party, particularly the Vice President of the party, Honorable Paulina Mpariwa, the Chairman of the party, we call him General Sox, Achikovero, Organizing Secretary Taisekwa, ladies and gentlemen. We welcome you to the to this very important press conference as the Movement for Democratic Change. This press conference has been necessitated by the developments that are happening in our country. In the historic referendum of 2013, the people of Zimbabwe promulgated a new people-driven and democratic constitution. The process of making this constitution was fraught with danger, including violence and intimidation and even murder of people who were supporting the constitutional process. Despite these difficulties, the people of Zimbabwe persevered and delivered a constitution that stands among the best in the world. Our constitution is the most comprehensive Bill of Rights on the African continent. It has institutions supporting democracy. And most importantly, it prescribes term limits for both the president and the parliament. We therefore, as the MDC, regard this document as a sacrosanct whose integrity must be preserved. Following the coup of 2017, ZANU-PF promised a new era. In fact, they promised a second republic. In the eyes of many people, the government was promising that it was making a clean break from the politics that has been exercised for a long time under the First Republic of Robert Mugabe. We believed that they would uphold the principles of the rule of law, constitutionalism, and in particular, we believed that the president was going to safeguard the constitution. To our surprise, after the 2023 elections, some elements within ZANU-PF started advocating for the third term. And this third term was initially targeted at the president only. The president himself, Dr. Mnangagwa, initially distanced himself from the calls for the third term. But what has happened within ZANU-PF seemed to throw doubt on what the president actually meant. Reports also indicate that the opposition in parliament has now jumped onto the bandwagon for the calls for 2030. We as the MDC stand opposed to the calls for the extension of term of the president and of parliament. But before I go to the president, let me go to the process that led to members of parliament changing course and supporting the third term. And this happened in circumstances that we think are extremely humiliating and self-serving. And I want to remind us that the said members of parliament were invited for a party at State House. Number two, they were promised additional motor vehicles by parliament and better working conditions by parliament. Number three, they were invited to the president's farm in Kwekwe, at which place they then uttered that they were supporting the third term. Fourth, for the first time, members of the opposition were given food to distribute. They were given bags of rice. I want to state it for the sake of completeness. We cannot sacrifice principle. We cannot sacrifice the people of Zimbabwe on the altar of individual gain. The president, Mnangagwa himself, said that he was not running for the third term. But we are surprised that he allowed the ZANU-PF Congress to make a resolution for the third term. He has allowed at his own farm members of the opposition, members of ZANU-PF to still talk about the Agenda 2030 or the agenda of the third term. In our view, the president is indicating right while turning left, and we cannot accept that. The MDC is firmly opposed to the constitutional amendments for 6 reasons. First of all, the proposed amendments undermine the democratic principles enshrined in both the Constitution and international best practice. Our Constitution says a president must serve for 2 terms of 5 years. International best practices says the same. So in bringing these amendments, we are violating that national principle and international principle. Point number 1. Point number 2, these amendments primarily serve the interests of the politicians who are involved in making these amendments. First of all, to the members of parliament, they want an additional unended term. Some of them clearly are now unelectable, and they want to be cushioned against the vagaries of democratic practice. And also, if the third term is allowed, it then leads to the establishment of a dynasty. Point number 2. Point number 3, the proposed amendments are being made despite the severe economic challenges that the people of Zimbabwe are facing. Now, one of the justifications given is that both the president and the parliament are doing extremely well. In other words, in some quarters, they say President Mnangagwa has run the country so well that he deserves the third term. This is not true. This is not correct. The people of Zimbabwe are suffering. There is unemployment. There is many people cannot afford the basic necessities of life. Although the Minister of Finance tells us about how the economy is doing well, the common man and the common woman are not experiencing any of this. Then number 4, Zimbabweans were subjected to long periods of one party and one man rule under President Robert Mugabe. I think we did about 38 years under the rulership of one person. And the Zimbabweans rejected that long-serving nature of heads of state. And they said that there must be a limited term. What this amendment would do is to bring back that era that we are running away from. It is to bring back what life was under Mugabe, and this was rejected by the people of Zimbabwe. Then number 5, let's not ignore the biological issues. President Mnangagwa is 82. At the time that his term ends, the legitimate term ends at 2028, he will be 86. At the time that the proposed term, additional term ends, he will be 91. Why should Zimbabwe have that type of ruler? Zimbabweans never voted in the constitution that they wanted to be run by geriatrics. They never voted that they wanted a person to serve despite more terms, despite having served his term. Coming to President Mnangagwa, he was a key member of Mugabe's cabinet since 1980. Of course, he shares the successes and failures of the First Republic, and especially the consignment of the people of Zimbabwe to the poverty that they have been consigned to under at least the First Republic. He cannot escape blame. He and his colleagues in ZANU-PF cannot escape blame. Then number two, President Mnangagwa took power in 2017 and completed part of Mugabe's term. Then he served another 5 years since 2018. He has been given another 5 years. I think he should be grateful. I think his family should be grateful. His party should be grateful. The people of Zimbabwe say there must be term limits, and term limits there should be. Now, Zimbabwe is under international isolation, which is point number 6. Zimbabwe is under international isolation. If we read those documents that establish the international isolation, Zidera, for example, and the comments by the Commonwealth, we find out that one of the reasons why Zimbabwe is under international isolation is the dearth of its democratic practices. What this amendment will do is it will cement Zimbabwe's image as a pariah state among the international community. Ladies and gentlemen, we all agree that Zimbabwe must rejoin the Commonwealth. The benefits of joining the Commonwealth are clear for all to see. The games for our sports people, developmental grants, favorable travel conditions, favorable business conditions, scholarships for our students. All of these are benefits associated with joining the Commonwealth. And the Commonwealth has said that they are considering Zimbabwe's application, but they are concerned with this type of amendments. So if this amendment is put, Zimbabwe will remain under sanctions. Zimbabwe will not rejoin the Commonwealth. And we think this is selfish on the party of those people who are fighting for the third term. Ladies and gentlemen, Zimbabweans, regardless of their political persuasion, are suffering under the economic decline. We know that our people don't have jobs, don't have food. There is economic collapse, total economic collapse. There are social hardships that our people are going through, especially in the urban areas. We stand totally opposed as the MDC to the wanton demolition of people's properties. We stand opposed to the partisan distribution of food aid that is happening in the rural areas. We are a labor-based party. We take notice that the conditions of service of our civil servants leave a lot to be desired. Most of them cannot afford the basic necessities of life, be they civil servants and even private servants. Adding to that, the pensions are very, very poor, including the pensions of the war veterans. But to us of concern is the raising of the retirement age to 70. Very few people, very few workers will reach that age. And we think that this is unfair. Zimbabweans are being subjected to overtaxation. These are the important issues that the parliament must grapple with. These are the important issues that the executive must grapple with, and not preoccupation with personal power. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to reiterate that as the MDC, no one has come to us saying they want a third term. What we only heard from the president himself was what he said when he was in China, that he was opposed. But we are worried about the developments coming from the opposition, coming from ZANU-PF itself, that the dangers of a third term are real. For that reason, we as the MDC are going to make preparations for a no vote during the referendum. We know that any extension of term will mean that there will be a referendum. In fact, in this case, there will be two referendums. The first referendum is a simple referendum on extension of term. Should term of office of the president be extended or not? And assuming that the referendum succeeds and the MDC gives notice that it is going to campaign no, it is going to campaign for a no vote as it did in 2000. This constitution amendment is unrighteous and self-serving. So we are going to campaign to the people of Zimbabwe to join forces with whoever wants to join forces with us to fight this third term, which amounts to desecration of the constitution. And of course, there will be the second referendum. And as you know, the law says that even if there's an extension of term, that extension cannot benefit the incumbent. They will need another referendum, this time specifically stating whether or not President Mnangagwa must stand again. And these two referendums must not be within 6 months of one another. So we will campaign for a no vote again, not because we have anything personal against President Mnangagwa. We think that President Mnangagwa, after his term, must go and rest. We think that it is time for other leaders. So we will campaign no in that regard. We campaign no against the MPs who want to extend their own term of office. They are doing this thing for their own benefit. The MDC never did that. Whatever changes the MDC was party to were for the benefit of the generality of the people of Zimbabwe. After all, the Constitution says the president must uphold and defend the Constitution. And the Constitution further goes on to say that the parliament is duty bound to preserve the Constitution. This parliament, the worst parliament we have had in living memory, is party to desecration of the Constitution. And we accordingly put them on notice. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, my lady. If there are any questions, I think you state your name and the media house you represent. We are starting from my right. Any questions?
So silence means contentment. But let me just emphasize, I'm being reminded by our vice president. As you know, Vice President Mpariwa was the Minister of Public Service, Labor and Social Welfare. And before that, she was a member of the General Council of the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions. There, she was also a member of the Commercial Workers Union, and so on. Now, she reminds me that Zimbabweans are some of the most taxed people on earth. There are a lot of taxes and so on, and we stand opposed to that. This is what this government and the parliament must grapple with, and not on the personal issues of extension of term. We will work with all progressive forces. We don't care whether they are from ZANU-PF, they are from the opposition, as long as they are opposed to the third term. We are duty-bound as a people to preserve our constitution, because this is the treasure that we are leaving to our generations, our future generations. Thank you very much.
Are you just going to wait for the amendment and the referendum, or the MDC is going to take action? Are you going to be reactive actually? And my second issue is, we are in 2025 now. As an alternative party or as an opposition party, how do you think the economic crisis should be addressed?
Anyone? I think that you can respond to that.
I think there's someone. Today is the day for ladies.
Oh. Yes, my lady, you are from?
How would you respond to critics who might argue that your opposition to term limit extension is inconsistent with your decision to withdraw from
Sorry, madam.
How would you respond to critics who argue that your opposition to term limit extension is inconsistent with your decision to withdraw from the past election?
Oh, thank you very much. In opposition to the term limit is inconsistent with your withdrawal from the election in 2024.
As a party, do you have any program of action in the event that the 2030 agenda proceeds? Do you have any program of action that we are going to see? How are you going to challenge the 2030 agenda from the party side? Are you going to see protests? Are you going to see any kind of action from the party?
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, yeah. Oh, thank you very much. Let me dispel an item of propaganda that is being circulated by the people who see the impeccability of our stance. The MDC stance is consistent. We said this last year. We said this last year, mid last year, end of last year. We are saying it this year, that we are opposed to the third term. At no point did the MDC ever advocate for an extension of any term. Now, where do these people get this propaganda from? They get it from our fight against the delimitation. We fought against delimitation in 2023. And we said that the delimitation must be redone. And the president must proclaim elections after the delimitation. At no point did we suggest that the election must be postponed. We never said that. And we challenge people to go to our constitutional court application and look at the draft order. The draft order is what we were asking the court to do for us. We were never asking for an extension. The people who came to court for an extension were the CCC. They sent Jeremiah Bamu to come and argue that the election must be postponed by 1 month. We at the MDC were saying the delimitation must be redone. And there was still time to redo the delimitation and still have the election within the timetable. And I want to say, the MDC has always had a responsible leadership. Yes, I visited the State House on 2 occasions. The first occasion, I visited the State House as a member, as the leader of the opposition. And in terms of the constitution, I should interface with the head of state. I went to see President Mnangagwa with the 21 demands. And those demands included the demands for electoral reform, including the diaspora vote. They included the demand for dialogue over the economic and social problems in Zimbabwe. That was the reason why I attended the State House. And we have agreed with my team that despite the fact that the document was confidential, we are going to make it available to the people of Zimbabwe so that they see why we were in the State House for the 21 demands, including the diaspora vote and other electoral reforms. The second time that I went to the State House as head of the MDC was to voice my concern and my disapproval to the head of state himself over the delimitation. So I went and confronted President Mnangagwa that the delimitation report is wrong, and I demonstrated to him how wrong it was. So that is the reason why I went to the State House, and it was with the full blessings of my party. I never took my members of parliament for a party at State House. I never took my members of parliament to be given bags of rice. I never took my members of parliament to anyone's farm. I went there in order to advance what was good for Zimbabwe. Now, we boycotted the 2023 elections because, number one, the delimitation report still existed, and there was no possibility of a free and fair election. We want that anybody who participates in this election will have consequences that go beyond simple participation and losing the election. They would split. We want, and it happened. We were punished by the Zimbabwe Election Commission. 87 of our MPs were disqualified from participating simply because we had embarrassed the Zimbabwe Election Commission by fighting against the delimitation. We had also embarrassed the state security, who had played an important role in the delimitation commission, and we were punished for it. 87 of my members of parliament were disqualified, and it was irresponsible of me as president to continue without 87 of my candidates. I was serious with taking power and running the affairs of the country. When you are president, you run the country via a parliament, via a cabinet drawn from parliament. Where was I going to draw my cabinet? Where was I going to draw people who were going to run my agenda? And therefore, just like Morgan Tsvangirai did in 2008, we made a principled decision to move out of the election. We let those who participated in the election deal with their mess. We never at any time said that our withdrawal from 2023 equals to endorsement for 2030. I don't see how the two match. They don't match. We were protesting against the delimitation and other malpractices. What must exercise the minds of any right-thinking opposition is the issue of electoral reforms. We want to participate in the elections of 2028, and we want to advocate for electoral reforms. Now, the MDC is not going to sit by and wait for the day of reckoning. We are not going to sit idly by and wait for the day of reckoning. There are enough telltale signs that ZANU-PF and the state are serious about the third term. If they were not serious about the third term, they would not put it as a resolution at their Congress. They would not mention it in the presence of the head of state. They would not punish those people who are against the third term. Therefore, ZANU-PF is serious, and we as the MDC are serious. This press conference is the beginning of our action, our struggle against the third term. We are advising the nation of the reasons why we are going to take certain decisions. And from here, we are going to go into full advocacy, telling the people of Zimbabwe what dangers they are going to be put in. We are going to be approaching members of the opposition, other people in the opposition. We don't care what they've said about us. We don't care how they've reacted to us. What we care for is what is in the best interest of the people of Zimbabwe. So we are going to approach them to make them see light this time that there is a danger. We warned them of the danger of delimitation. They didn't listen. We warned them of the dangers of participating in 2023. They didn't listen. And what has happened, I hope, will make them listen. We are warning them of the dangers of the third term. The issue of the economic crisis that is happening, Rutendo, have to be addressed in a very holistic manner. So this is an area that requires everybody to participate, be it the opposition, be it the ruling party. That is why the MDC has said we are for dialogue to resolve the issues for the best interest of the people of Zimbabwe. The economic meltdown of Zimbabwe is beyond the capacity of one party, is beyond the capacity of ZANU-PF. Now, how can the economic crisis be addressed? Among other things, by removing the international isolation of Zimbabwe. Because of its international isolation, Zimbabwe does not have access to international credit. It does not have access to international markets. And therefore, it is unable to compete at the international stage. So if we embark on electoral reform, on a dialogue, we open up those nations who have embargoed Zimbabwe to say Zimbabweans are fighting one another. We campaign to end the international isolation. We can also resolve our problems by simply joining the Commonwealth. As I have said, joining the Commonwealth opens markets, Commonwealth markets. We will have development grants coming to our industries. We will have scholarships for our students, removing the pressure on the parents. We will also have our athletes, because athletics, soccer, etc., sport is now a means of survival. They will be able to compete in the Commonwealth Games and earn a revenue. We can also improve our economy by being just to the diaspora. The people in the diaspora are bringing in a lot of money, but they are exercising obligations without rights. They are bringing money to Zimbabwe. The minister acknowledges it, but they are not being given the right to vote. So if those reforms are made, then you will see an automatic response of the economy. We stand available as the MDC to help this government, to help this government end the economic problems that are there. Certainly, overtaxation of people must cease. Already, I think, is it Triangle or Hippo Valley, one of the sugar estates, sent a notice a day ago or 2 days ago to say that they are going to retrench. Now, that is massive misery that is going to come. That company employs quite a lot of people. In other countries, where big business was faced with collapse, the government stepped in to save the business and therefore save the jobs. We saw that in America under Obama, when that collapse was happening. The government came in and aided the businesses. So this government can still do it. I know, of course, that you will ask where the government will get the money. There is no country which has more money, I think, than Zimbabwe. Because Zimbabwe has any mineral in the world. Plenty of gold, diamond, tin, platinum, liquid natural gas now. In Zarabani, we have that. but it is lithium, but it is in the hands of few people. So we need to resolve the distributional issues. So we have a lot of ideas to share with this government. Our programs of action, I think it tallies with Chengeto's question, I think. Our program of action, Rutedo's question. Our program of action is going to be rolled out. But we want to assure you, we want to assure the nation that as we did in 2000, where we felt that the government was shortchanging the people of Zimbabwe, we organized a no vote. We shall do the same in 2025 etc. I am told that there is a race against time. Some people want to bring an amendment in the parliament to beat August 2025. Why beat August 2025? Because once you get to August 2025, you are 2 years into the presidential term. And 2 years into the presidential term is also regarded as a term. A person who has done 2 years into their term have done a term. I think the very funny lawyers that they are consulting are telling them 2 falsehoods. The first falsehood is that if the presidential term is changed from 5 years to 7 years, then it's not covered by the constitution, it's not an extension. That's what the lawyers, the funny lawyers are telling them. Now, we wrote that constitution, and that clause, ladies and gentlemen, if I may share with you, was drafted, was negotiated by 6 people. Paul Mangwana of ZANU-PF, Jacob Mdenda of ZANU-PF, Edward Mukosi of MDC Green, Josephat Chuma of MDC Green, Magaisa, Alex Magaisa of MDCT, and Douglas Mwonzora of MDCT. And when we wrote that clause, we were very, very, very careful. It's not going to be easy to amend this constitution. And when we say extension of term, if a term was 1 year and you make it 1 year, 6 months, you have extended it. You have extended the elastic band. That's an extension of term. So we don't know where these lawyers are getting this from, but we stand ready to litigate. We stand ready to demonstrate. We stand ready to advocate to the people of Zimbabwe. So regarding the method we are going to use, we will follow the teachings of Vladimir Lenin. And Lenin said in his article, Guerrilla Warfare, and I quote, "There is no prescribed method of struggle. Every method will depend on the circumstances that exist at that point in time." So what we are going to do, what we are going to employ as the MDC is going to be determined when we start playing the game. But as the MDC, we have already started, we are conscientizing our people. And we are not going to engage in violence. We are not going to engage in anything unlawful. We are going to act in the 4 corners of the Constitution.
Thank you. Another round. Anyone else? Yes, Brian.
Brian, I have 2 questions for you. The first one is, you have talked about the EFB having punished you in 2023. And if there's a referendum to come, it will probably be administered by the same SEC that you have talked about, that made you boycott the election. Do you therefore have confidence that we are going to see the free and fair results coming from the referendum? Then my second question is, or maybe I've just, it is coupled with the subject.
Thank you very much. That's my Mkwasha, but he knows that he did nothing for me during the Christmas holidays, and I put him on notice that his fine is coming. Thank you very much, Brian, for that question. Yes, there could be unfairness. There will be a lot of obstacles that will be put in the MDC's way. We do not, at this point in time, imagine that our struggle against the amendment is going to be a walk in the park. We know that people are going to be arrested. We know that false charges are going to be brought against us. We know that some people are going to be incited against us. In fact, we know that some elements within the state wants to stoke a rebellion within the MDC on the basis that the current leadership are an obstacle to the third term. And they are going to sycophants, people they think are sycophants within the MDC, to say that we must destabilize the MDC. We know that, and we are prepared for that. But we are going to keep on knocking. We are going to pull ZEC kicking and screaming into delivering a free and fair referendum. And if we campaign well, and the people of Zimbabwe vote overwhelmingly no, it will be very difficult to cheat. They tried it in 2000, but the gap was so overwhelming. The work that the MDC, the ZCTU, and other forces had done at that point in time, the NCA, was so great that it was difficult to cheat. So we are going to have a free and fair referendum. We are going to force ZEC to have a free and fair referendum, whether they like it or not. As the Cuban hero says, Jose Marti, he was, before Fidel Castro, there was a man called Jose Marti. And Jose Marti said, rights are not asked for, they are demanded. They are not freely given, they are taken. We are going to make sure that the government will not cheat at the referendum. And we are preparing for that. That does not mean, of course, that they are not going to cheat, but we are going to fight that.
Yes, thank you. Someone else?
No, yeah, it's okay.
I think we have come to the end of the tender. We are now opening up for Studio 7, Shona. You can come forward.